the Nigerian Communications Commission has rejected the request by telco operators for an upward review of tariffs, saying that any such decision must be fair to subscribers and engender healthy competition among service providers. In a statement issued at the weekend, the NCC said there's no cause for alarm as it did not approve any increase, adding that it remained committed to international best practices and established procedures in its regulatory activities in the country. Well, let's get into that, shall we? Joining us to discuss further, Vivian Ejugwu, who's a telco analyst with Vetiva Capital Management Limited, and Gbolahan Ologunro, who is a senior research analyst with Cordros Capital. Thank you both for joining us. Vivian, let's start with you. Getting into the language of the NCC, saying that any such decision must be fair to subscribers and decision must engender healthy competition. Well, what do you make of that? How do you interpret that language from the NCC?
So my comments on this will try to look at it from two aspects. That's from the subscriber, the consumer aspect, and the telco aspect. So for subscribers, we're dealing with nationwide inflationary pressures. So the disposable income of consumers has somewhat been depressed.
Okay.
So saying that you want to increase tariff costs right now doesn't seem like the right time. And then when you look at it from the telco aspect, the demands are justifiable, but we also have to look at the fact that the industry is still yielding healthy margins, even with all these price increases. And most of what they have put out are variable costs. Price of energy. If price of energy comes down today, are we going to revise tariffs downwards?
Okay.
Yeah. So at the end, the NCC is just trying to do its job and maintaining and promoting market fairness for subscribers and consumers.
I like that argument. I like the variable versus fixed cost argument. Gbolahan, what do you think?
Yeah, thank you for having me. So, like Vivian said, the decision of the regulatory body is not far-fetched when you consider the strain on consumers' income, over the years. However, I think, that appeal from outing is quite justifiable when you consider the fact that the last time we saw a review of telecom tariff in the industry was as far back as 2001 and 2003. So, there seems to be that view that, possibly upward review in tariff prices is long overdue. But notwithstanding, looking at where, the current prices, I still believe that, it is still quite sustainable for the industry, more so that you have not seen any sort of negative pressure on margins as you typically expect when you consider even other sectors that have been exposed to, those broad challenges in the economy, elevated inflationary pressures, as well as, the persistent depreciation in the value of the naira against the USD.
All right, thanks, Gbolahan. Vivian, the NCC says it's committed to international best practices. But international best practices, when costs go up, the fees and services of the business that's providing those services goes up as well. So how are they keeping in line with international best practices?
So international best practices is also promoting the rights of the consumer, right?
Okay.
And, like I said, ensuring and maintaining a free and fair market. So like I stated earlier, margins haven't necessarily taken a dramatic fall. So reviewing tariff costs at this point is not the right timing, like I stated earlier. It's not yet cause for alarm for the NCC to step in. Margins are still quite good, ranging 50 to 55%. So it's not.
You're sticking with that, eh?
Yeah, I'm sticking with that.
All right, Gbolahan, Vivian continues to say that margins are healthy. I think you already said that as well. So as long as margins are healthy, 50 to 55% margins, even though your costs are going up by 35 to 40%, that's okay. As long as profit margins are up, then costs can continue to increase, and they should just bear and grin it. Is that what we're saying, Gbolahan?
Yeah, but I think another important point to note is, to a large extent, these telco players have been able to tactically pass on some price increments to consumers. And I'm talking about, consumption of data services. So, Rotus, if you look at, your consumption of data bundles,
it's high.
In the last 2 years, compared to about 4-5 years ago, you would have noticed some substantial increment in the exhaustion of your data bundles. So, in terms of replenishment rate for data bundles, I think that has sort of increased. So to a large extent, it's more like a tactical way that these telco operators have been able to pass on price increments to consumers. So if you look at, expansion in top line, and you look at the source of that, strong growth we have seen in top line across board, it's been more of, growth in data revenue. So I think that to a large extent, price increments has been tactically passed on to consumers through increase in replenishment rate for data bundles.
Thank you, Gbolahan. Vivian, didn't you write an outlook for Vetiva on the telco sector, where I remember there was a headline that said, rising costs are a headwind to margin expansion? Didn't you write that? And so if you're writing that and then you're now saying that, anyway, speak about that. You wrote that, yes?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so explain yourself.
Yeah, so rising costs is something that every other industry has had to deal with. It's not just telcos. So I still maintain my stance saying that it is not, there's no cause for alarm yet. Okay. When we start to see margins dramatically dive, and that's when we would look to the operator or the regulator to step in, to sort of kind of balance the market for everyone. Okay,
so you did write that. Yeah. All right. Gbolahan, are regulatory hitches part of the headwinds faced by the telco sector in Nigeria?
Yeah, certainly. I think you can also rule out, the impact of regulatory headwinds on the sector. About some years ago, we saw the directive from NCC restricting mobile network operators from selling new SIM cards to, people who probably need to get those new SIM cards. So they need to comply with NIN registration and, of course, eventual linking of NIN with their SIM cards. And in the last 2 weeks, mobile network operators have been required to disconnect the lines of subscribers who are yet to also link their NIN to their SIM card. So we expect pressure on, voice revenue on the back of that directive from the NCC. So these are issues in the industry bordering around, regulatory headwinds that we think has also put further strain on, the margins of industry players. But because, they have been able to sort of shield the impact of those, regulatory headwinds, and the impact has not really been felt or seen in terms of decline in margins.
Thanks, Gbolahan. All right, Vivian, since you'd like to talk about margins so much, profit margins, data versus voice, what's going forward for the sector?
So what we have seen is slowing growth in voice. That's because voice has been hit with the presence of cheaper alternatives, the internet calls, over-the-top calls, which are like sort of cheaper. And, the rise of the internet has also, like I said, affected voice. Everybody's online, everybody's calling on WhatsApp, Instagram. So that has affected voice growth. Aside that, like he stated, regulatory hitches, the NIN SIM leakage policy. When this came in, the subscriber base took a dive, and that also affected voice growth. But so data is what is coming to, will I say, save the industry, because this increasing need to be online proliferation of smartphones has sort of helped telcos, grow their revenue amidst the slowing revenue from voice.
All right, Gbolahan, I'll give you the last word. 5G is going to be a game changer for the telco industry. Gbolahan, very quickly.
Yeah, certainly. I think, that's probably the next phase in terms of further acceleration in data revenue. But I don't think that, with the level we have gotten to with regards to 4G penetration, I still think, 5G is still a long way to go. But notwithstanding, I still believe that, industry players will begin to make gradual investments in that space just to prepare for, the future growth prospect with regards to rolling out 5G services.
All right, great conversation. We'll keep monitoring as we always do on Arise TV.